Well, here in British Columbia, they now have it, you can get an enhanced driver's license with that bio ID, as you're saying. Also, as of June 1st, every single Canadian that leaves Canada, no matter where you travel, once you travel outside of Canada, you have to have that passport in hand, which is additional cost, right?
Yeah, it's expensive as well. I mean, certainly in the UK, it's about £80 for the passport and another £60 for the ID card if you get it.
You mentioned the Channel Islands. Actually, the Channel Islands during World War II were occupied by the Nazis. That's as close as the Nazis got to Britain.
Yeah, that was the only bit of Britain they actually occupied, which was a sort of tragedy for the island I came from, because up to that point it was very French. It had a French heritage, and everyone was a native French speaker, or bilingual, spoke English as well. But of course, when the Nazis invaded, then all the children were evacuated to the UK mainland and came back speaking English. So the death of a culture just like that overnight.
So how close do you think that the UK is at this time? I remember you during your talk that you were talking about how the chips, right? And how some people basically think it's a great idea because they go out drinking, they put their hand up the bar and boom, they can get their drinks. You know, how close is the UK to getting the chip? Because that chip comes out of Florida. There's a Florida company that manufactures it. Yeah. So I'm just wondering if you heard anything.
Well, I gather it's being used in Florida as well for old people's retirement communities, in case, you know, someone with Alzheimer's goes walkabout or whatever. And of course, some communities are putting chips in children as well, because that keeps them safe, they think, from all these evil paedophiles lurking on every street corner, which, I mean, you know, of course, people like that exist, but not to the level of scaremongering we get in the newspapers. In the UK, it's interesting because there has been a huge pushback against the notion of these biometric ID cards, which is the first step towards chipping people. And also it's going to cost a fortune, so the UK is pretty broke at the moment. It might not be able to afford to roll it out. But there is an awareness. There's been a very effective campaign against ID cards. If the ID cards are blocked, then that will delay the rolling out of the chips. It will become a voluntary issue, so that people could, again, chip their children for safety or old people. But more worryingly, as I mentioned, as you said in the talk, the idea that people could choose to have a chip put under their skin as a lifestyle choice. I mean, there are nightclubs in London and other cities where you get preferential treatment. You have the nightclub chip where you can actually store a certain amount of money and all the rest of it on the data. And you bypass all the queues to get into the clubs. You go and sit in the VIP section. So they're selling it as something cool. You don't have to take your wallet in. You just, as you say, put it over the reader at the bar and get some more drinks. And I just can't believe that people be such suckers. But then I suppose, you know, the success of programs like Big Brother, you know, that awful reality TV show, I always felt was almost like grooming the population to see constant surveillance as something good, something to aspire to, something that will give you a cool factor, an instant Z-list celebrity. And it's a bit like being groomed as a population, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how with this reality TV, even with Survivor and all the rest, that people are thinking, you know, once they get in front of the camera, then they can get these 15 minutes of fame, and they don't realize what they have to give up in order to get that.
Yes.
And getting to the next point, I remember a long time ago, I read a report where it said that during the Canadian election, we have this number right next to our name and number next to the ballot you're voting. And what they used to do in the past, we're probably talking about prior to the Eastern Bloc countries falling. Every time that they had a federal election here in Canada, every time someone voted communist, the name was taken and then put on a list down the United States and had over the United States, and it was blacklisted in the United States. So I'm not sure if that's still happening right now. However, we still have the numbers next to our names and the number next to the ballot. So, you know, there's probably a chance that they're using this to possibly go after the no-fly list because if someone votes for a radical party that they don't agree with. What have you heard, like, in regards to the UK? Have you heard of something like this happening when the people go towards their election or gathering information?
Yeah. As far as I'm aware, we had the same system, which is numbers next to your name. So there's no such thing as a real secret ballot. Although I have to say I haven't voted in years because I just don't think there's much point. I don't agree with either of the options. My lawyer said to me, don't vote, it'll just encourage them. But yes, of course, that would flag up people's affiliations, and it was misused and abused. In fact, not just in the UK, but across Europe. I know someone who was from Holland, had been in their youth a member of the Communist Party, and every time they went into the USA, they were pulled aside at immigration and grilled about their communist affiliations. How that came up, who knows? And I think as well, it's not just the communists. Of course, in the era of the Soviet Union, then they could pretend to justify an interest in, people being communist. They might be trying to subvert the fabric of our society. But I don't think that's ever 100% gone away. They still take an interest in activists and campaigners and people involved in left-wing groups, certainly in the UK. In fact, I think it's ramped up over the last few years because of the success and the profile of the peace movement. And a lot of people who are involved in more radical politics, of course, are anti-war. So I think there's been an increase again of surveillance of these sort of groups, not just by MI5 and not just by the police, but also by private security firms who farm out this the MI5 sort of farms out this information to organisations like Kroll or Diligence or Blackwater or whatever, and get them to send in agents and to monitor who's involved in these sort of agencies. So it is a problem, and I think it's going to get worse because, of course, as the credit crunch bites further, parties like the Communist Party will become more attractive to people across the world. I mean, I gather even in Japan, membership has risen exponentially in the last few months of the Communist Party. They've never had a significant membership in Japan, of course, but suddenly it's going up because the workers feel that they're being ripped off, they're being given temporary jobs, they're not giving job security, all the rest of it. So they're turning towards something like the Communist Party.